I think, I'm not sure because my parents were not abusive, but I think that even if your parents were abusive, you still love them as a kid. You naturally love your parents. And I know other people who have been horribly abused by their parents,
Yes.
and they still to this day even feel some level of love for them. Even if they've cut them
Yes.
entirely out of their life, there's still a spark of love there. Later in life is when you start like recognizing, well, this doesn't look like love, and that doesn't look like love, and this doesn't look like this, and this certainly doesn't feel like it.
And love is naturally our, as we said before, love is naturally our state. It's something that we vibrate at our most inner essence. So even if we have a bunch of stuff on top of it, if this is not love, or I've had a horrible abusive childhood, adulthood, I've had these horrible things happen, there's still love inside of us, or the person that's done it to us, or how we perceived it's happened to us.
Right.
There's still love inside of them too. So recognizing that in others and ourselves, no matter what relationships we have, recognizing that there's always that love that connects us to each other, that source, to me, one of the best things we can do in our everyday thing, our everyday life. For sure.
Yeah, I think it took me a really long time though to figure all that out. It wasn't
Yeah.
an easy road. There was separation. I think when you first go to school.
Yep.
Maybe not in kindergarten necessarily or first grade, but eventually somewhere along the road, you start feeling even more separated.
Yes.
Everybody isn't loving each other equally anymore.
Right.
People are withdrawing. And then I think when you get older and you're in your teen years, then you really are affected by that. To various degrees. I'm sure everyone's not affected in the same way, but on some level, you're feeling like maybe you're not good enough. People don't want to talk to you. They're like avoiding you. And these people seem to think you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. And how is it that these people think you're so horrible or whatever? And you start feeling that, I don't know, it's like a tearing apart, right?
Yes.
Tearing apart your soul, and you start feeling less than you felt before.
Yes.
And then when we're conditioned with this idea that, the way to have a happy life is you do these things. You graduate from high school, you go to college, you get a degree, you meet someone, you fall in love, you have babies, and man, your life is going to be the bomb. You're going to be so happy. And I did all those things and found out I was more unhappy than I had ever been. And I'm like, but I did all the things I was supposed to do, but I didn't feel like I was being loved in my relationship. I didn't feel like I was giving love in the way I would prefer. I felt very alienated from my family because I didn't want them to know what was happening in my relationship, and so you're separating yourself from the people who've loved you your whole life, trying to make this other love thing work. And love became very confusing at that point. It was so confusing.
It is, because like you said, we're told something. I mean, I remember watching Disney films. As a young child, I just was loved. I didn't think about it. It was just something I gave freely because it's who I was. I hadn't been told anything else until, like you said, conditioning started happening in first grade. Kids started to section off. There started to be these groups. And for me, I was not part of that particular group. I always did better with boys than girls. Boys,
me
for
too,
me, were a little bit more accepting. I don't know. Good for you guys. Girls were a little bit more cliquey for me. So I definitely got along better with the boys, at least until I started developing. And then they just wanted to date me. I don't know. But I had a teacher that also was very, didn't recognize that I was seeing some things that were not of this realm, and was extremely abusive. So, and then I was like, well, I must not be worthy of that love because she's telling these other kids they're good, but she's telling me I'm not good. And she pulled my desk out into the hallway and everything. I mean, spanked me. It was bad. Yeah. And so I just, I think, the separateness of what is love and what isn't, again, as I went along in life, and just, I'm like, oh, this is love, this isn't, the Disney princesses. Well, Prince Charming is going to come rescue me, and we're going to fall in love and be in the castle. And did I think exactly that way? Probably a little differently. But I do remember those romantic fairy tale. This is what love is. This is what you want. You want your Prince Charming to come rescue you and carry you off into the castle, and life is perfect. But when I started
Sweep
to
you off
date,
your feet.
yes, it
Yeah.
was much different when I started to date.
Yeah, a lot different.
It's not that the people I dated weren't amazing. They were. They all taught me vital things I needed in this life, for sure, one way or another. But it was far cry from what I perceived as love, this big romantic fairy tale. And it isn't until you start, to me, love is really being honest with yourself and other people as well. To me, until I would always, oh, this person did this to me, this person did this to me, and not recognizing that I needed to really look within myself, because nobody's doing anything to me. That's how I'm perceiving it is. And I have the complete power to change that based on my energy, as we talked about the last time. And love is always within me. And so I have to strip away anything in the way of that love in order to connect with some love on the outside. If that makes sense.
It's quite a process, though. I mean, that's not something you come to right away. It's something that you have to, I think we will repeat, even if it's with the same person, because in this day and age, people are moving from one relationship to another quite rapidly. Yeah. And it doesn't allow you to recognize, I think, that you're the one causing this, Yes. And truthfully, once you do, because here's the painful part about all that, you recognize at some point in your life, if you haven't already, it's coming, that the problem isn't these other people. The problem is you. Yes. And that's a hard pill to swallow, because you're like, why would I be involved in this abusive relationship? Right? Why would I put myself in that position?
Why do I didn't do this to me? Person. Yes.
Right? It's this other person, and truthfully, it is the other person. I'm not giving anybody an out. If you've done horrible things to another person, it's your fault. Yes. You did that. You have to take ownership of that. Sure. But if I put myself in a position to where that's happening to me, that's on me.
And over.
I should have recognized the very first time there was any evidence. And at first it doesn't really look like evidence. And it's a very interesting trap to put yourself in. But you are putting yourself in that trap. And if you don't 100%. Get out the minute you recognize that you're in there, that's on you. The world is reflecting to you basically who you are.
Yes.
Yes. So somewhere, now I'm not saying I'm an abusive person because I was in an abusive relationship. What I'm saying is I was abusing myself, right? Absolutely. My mental, my thought patterns, my mental state was abusing me. I was abusing myself by thinking I wasn't good enough. I didn't deserve to be loved. I can't measure up to these standards or whatever it is. You're thinking those thoughts, and therefore you draw this person to you who basically has anger issues, and you then become their sounding board for their anger issues, right?
Yeah.
And so I can't blame the other person. I mean, I can. If I'm in victimhood, I'm definitely going to be blaming the other person. And that's the only way you can start to actually get yourself out of that scenario. But if you don't recognize what you bring to the table in that, then you can't get yourself out of it. You're not loving yourself.
Right. Exactly.
You are not loving yourself. If you're not loving yourself, you're not loving the other. you are helping to co-create that scenario so that the both of you can wake up and begin to love yourself. And if it's not going to happen together, then you can separate and try it again with someone else. But if you're not consciously aware that you weren't loving yourself, you'll bring the same kind of pattern back into your life, the same kind of person wrapped in a different package.
A little different turn of it. Yes.
Until you recognize that you have to love yourself, that you are causing this because you're not loving yourself.
100%. Yes. Every relationship we have, it doesn't matter what it is, platonic, romantic, whatever, is something that we need outside of ourselves. Let me rephrase that. It's not something we need outside of ourselves. It's something we're seeking outside of ourselves to reflect back the work we need to do. I've definitely found that in my life. It doesn't mean that we don't need anybody. We're wired for, we're definitely wired as humans for companionship, but so if people, I feel like for me, when I drew back and I looked at it as this is a learning process, rather than being quick to just cut it off and be like, nope, this isn't how I want it to be, so see ya. It doesn't mean to take abuse. That's not what I mean. But sometimes some of the best growth we do is in relationships where we have that person directly in front of us to mirror back to us what it is we need. And if you're fortunate enough to have a very patient partner that's willing to grow with you and sit with you through this and reflect back honestly what they're seeing in the relationship, that to me is some of the best growth you could do. I'm very fortunate. I had that and have that now.
It's very loving.
Yes. Somebody who's really and honest. To me, that's one of the highest forms of love is actually being honest with somebody. Even when you're going to say something that it might not make them feel good, knowing that you're saying it and you're coming from love, and saying, you know what, Calleigh, I love you, but when you leave the toilet seat down in the middle of the night, it bothers me. or when I just really felt that you've been disconnecting from me, let's talk about that. See, and if I'm feeling that way, but if it's something that's not happening, let's talk about where this is coming from so I can do my healing. So it's in love, it's about finding that partner, if you're choosing to be in a relationship, that will also mirror that love that you have for yourself back to you, and be honest with you about things that maybe you can't see yourself.
Right. I guess so. In other words, what we're saying is love yourself before you get into a relationship. Know that you are love before you get into a relationship. I mean, that makes your life easier, but truthfully, you won't really know where you're not loving yourself if you're not in relationship with others. And that doesn't mean a romantic partnership. That could be your best friend, right? That could be any work environment relationship. They will too also reflect back to you where you're not caring for yourself, you're not loving yourself. And until you get to the space where you are loving yourself and you recognize that that's actually who you are love.
Yes.
You're never going to have the kind of relationship, like romantic relationship, that you, I think, desire, because I think everyone desires to come into partnership with someone on some level. We're programmed that way to come together, to reunite, right? And share the love that you are with another person, and then know yourself as that. Know yourself as love through your relationship with another, because you can't know it by yourself. You can know it intellectually, but you can't have an experience of it.
Yes.
When you're in relationship with someone, you get to experience who you are, and you are love.
I think you bring up a good point too about knowing and believing. That vibration is completely separate. People can know a lot of things, but
Yes.
if it's not one of your beliefs, it's not going to sit in you. It's not going to resonate out of you. It's just going to be like a useless thing that kind of gets around up
Yeah.
here and doesn't come into play. And
Right.
I also I learned to not be so hard on myself. Again, back to the Disney princess. Oh, Prince Charming's gonna come and we're gonna live happily ever after. Well, obviously there's happily ever after is not. I've had lots of what I thought would be happily ever after that was not happily ever after. And at first I was very hard on myself. I find men actually have a harder time with this. Some of the men I listen to, when relationships don't work, people are very hard on men in relationships. Oh, that dog, he did this, he did that. But what I find is a lot of men hold so much accountability for relationships ending and so much shame that they couldn't make it work out. I find that much more than women, and I find that interesting. But I learned not to be so hard on myself. When relationships ended, it was because that everything I needed from that relationship had ended. And it was a long time before I learned to sit there and reflect on, what did I learn from this relationship?
Yes.
What do I need to change within myself so I don't attract the same thing the next time? I mean, it's not that the people that I dated weren't wonderful. They all were in their own respect. And they all taught me very valuable lessons, but I learned those lessons and didn't need them anymore after I moved on from.
Yes. And that's perfectly okay. And I think that's why we do move through relationships a much faster. All of life has changed, really. When you think back about your parents, even think about your grandparents and what the roles were between those two people. And truthfully, if you look even at other cultures, there's no love involved in some of these relationships at all.
Exactly.
Right? They're just,
Nope.
Betrothed to each other,
Yep.
and they have to figure it out. And there's, I mean, that can work too, because really all you're trying to figure out is who you are. And when you discover that you are loved, then there's nothing else to do but then to give that.
Yes.
To shine that light on to other people so they recognize that they too are loved. And maybe the way that they're behaving or thinking about themselves, that is not reflective of who they are.
I had I've struggled with self-love my whole life. Oh, my whole life.
I think
Literally.
everybody does.
Yes, it's a hard thing. And I very much learned from an early age to be a people pleaser. So I thought it was love, but it wasn't. It
No.
wasn't at all. I was just pleasing the other person. And so I was being told I was a good girl, or I was a good wife, or I was a good whatever I was in that relationship, because I was pleasing other people. Well, when I started to step out of that, I was in a relationship about 3 years ago, and things just weren't working at all for me. And so again, words and power and energy, we'll go back to that. I said to the universe, I don't care whether it's this person, not this person. I don't care. I want my true path. Literally the next day he broke up with me. I shit you not. I was like, was it hurtful? Yes. But in that moment, the very first time I heard those words, I was like, wow, that shit works fast.
Yep.
And it did. And but through that process, that was really the most where I was able to sit with myself and really reflect on what self-love actually was, and how I needed to put my needs first. How it wasn't just a one and done. Oh, I love myself now. Check that box. Great. It's a daily process of you doing what's best for yourself, regardless of what other people think or feel. And should you come from love? Well, yeah, you are accountable. If you're a jerk to other people, you are accountable for that. So, you do need to bring forth your own energy in that state of love, but doing what's best for you every day, regardless of what everybody else thinks, feels, says, and showing up for yourself every single day. Because if you don't show up for yourself, you can't show up for other people in love either. You might people please them into thinking you are, but you're not going to be able to show up for other people if you can't even show up for yourself and love.
Yeah. And a lot of people will call that selfish. You're
Yes,
putting your
I
needs
hear that a
above.
lot.
Why aren't you thinking about me? But the truth is that everyone is really thinking about themselves anyway.
Yeah,
And what you're doing, if you're not putting yourself and your needs and loving yourself first, what you're doing is you're harming yourself.
yes,
And we don't recognize that until we do, until we until we recognize it, that I
yes,
can't bring to the table anything for you until I take care of me. I'm living my life inside my own mind, and you are
yes,
doing the same thing. And
yeah,
you have no idea what I need or what I want in this moment. And therefore, I can't expect you to give that to me. I need to be the one who's powerful enough to
yes,
say, I need this.
yes,
This is what I want right now. And I don't care
yes,
if you are always saying, oh, I don't care. We can go to any restaurant, whatever you want. It's that simple. You must have some idea. I mean, sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's like, I don't care. I'm so hungry. I could eat anything. But
yeah,
sometimes you have an idea like, oh, I would prefer to go to this place because I love this thing. And you don't say it because you're, again, a people pleaser. And you're saying, oh, whatever you want, honey.